Hi, welcome to Real Magic Review. My name is Steve Faulkner and this is my interview with Andi Gladwin, and what a corker it is. But before we show you the interview, can you please like, subscribe and check out cardmagiccourse.com. This is my online card magic course of over 200 videos, all of me teaching in depth on moves, theory, even how to practice, and we have live sessions every week, or nearly every week, unless something untoward happens, where we all get together, and it's a really, really lovely community and a safe space for you to chat about magic and to try out new stuff. So that's cardmagiccourse.com. This is brilliant to do this interview. I feel really energized after this. I've just recorded it and it was an absolute pleasure. This is where we get to the good stuff. It's so nice to be able to sit down with someone like Andi and talk for over an hour about his approach to magic, his thoughts on magic. Genuinely, this isn't just a big sort of promo for the book, which is incredible, and of course that's part of it, but this is more about how you sort of boil down all that knowledge into something like this. And I'm sure no matter where you are in your journey on magic, whether you're just beginning or you've been into it for a while, you'll get something so valuable from this interview. It was a real pleasure. Thank you so much to Andi for doing this. Do watch it till the end, all right? It's an hour and 10 minutes. That's a good thing. That's where we get to the good stuff. It's a rare opportunity. So watch everything and do comment. Ask any questions afterwards, and I will be doing an in-depth review on the book as a separate thing. So just enjoy the interview, and thanks again to Andi Gladwin. I saw you last night on the Guy Hollingworth thing. I saw the day before, whatever it was, the launch of the book. You had this amazing one shot kind of trailer, and I want to talk about that. I don't want to treat this just about the book, because I think, but looking at the questions people have sent, they want to know about your approach to magic and how you learning and all that. And I think that because of your Astonishing Essays book, it's good to look at. People are always fascinated with how to learn magic from books, which I really want to go into today. But with the launch, with all the stuff that's been going on, with the masterclass, with the Vanishing Inc Black Friday sale, which I don't want to kind of make it about the sale, but I know how hectic that is for any business. How is now for you?
Today it feels like, in some ways, like the day after a magic convention. Like when everybody is gone and all the fun has happened. At that point is normally when I'm kind of walking around the convention going, oh, that was cool. It's so surreal. I am genuinely exhausted. I bet you can see the bags under my eyes. I have just had the most rewarding few weeks leading up to this, because a book launch like this doesn't just happen in a few days. This is actually kind of almost a year's worth of work. So to see people saying such positive things about my work, it just feels really, really nice. But ultimately, I am exhausted.
Yeah. So thanks for doing this. And I know, I kind of watch what you're doing at the moment, and I kind of look at when there's a point last week when I just kind of went, you've got to breathe, but I wasn't doing half the stuff that you're doing. So I was kind of then looking at you going, Andi, you've got to breathe. But you do have that kind of drive that I've always known about, since back in the kind of early sessions and the Deceptions, the shows that we did in Cheltenham.
Yeah,
but it's go on.
We've known each other for years, and you just know I can't help it. It's not like I don't know. I can't help just putting everything into these projects, and it's not that I have a point to prove or anything like that. I just love doing it, and that's why I just keep pushing myself. And I truly haven't relaxed in days now since this launch, but that's for no other reason than it's just my passion. It's just what I love doing, so it's fun.
Yeah, and I think that some people get that mixed up with when they see people. I think there are people that are driven for various reasons. There's the kind of, the classic sort of archetypal type A. Is it type A or B, where it's just like drive, because I've got something to prove and I want everybody to feel I'm the best. But I think that the genuine passion is what drives most of us, and it's that thing of, it's kind of like people have been asking me a lot about the setup with the video and all that kind of stuff. And it's like, that's just 6 years of geeking out, and it's not really about, I need to prove it's sorted. It's more about doing something well that you're creating, which I always sort of saw, you know, a lot of people on the comments are like, Vanishing Inc are great, Vanishing Inc are great. And they're not doing that in the way they're saying Amazon is great because it sells everything. It's more there's something about that. And I don't want to make it a big sort of Vanishing Inc loving, because I always get accused of being affiliated anyway, because, you know, it's a good company that I tend to respect. But about the book, I was thinking that sort of passion thing. You've had a lot to do with creating magic books. You've sort of helped design them and put them together. Obviously, put your eye on them. You've written loads of them.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody said, I mean, Alex said on the thing, why a book and why now? You know, why was it not tempting? Because it's almost like the busier you get, the harder it is to do those focus projects, isn't it? Where you know you've got to put your all into it, which you clearly have. So why was it not tempting to go, I just bang a few downloads out? You know,
it wasn't tempting actually, and yeah, why now makes it sound as if like, why are you doing it so soon? But to me, like, why has it taken so long? Is kind of what's going on in my head, because when I hear people say all the time, I've been working on this book for 10 years, and you know, I work with enough authors to know that when you say you've been working on a book 10 ye's, what you mean is you've dipped in and out for a few hours every 6 months.
Thought about it.
Exactly that. And, you know, I'm lucky in some way that I get to cut through all of that when I'm working with authors, because I get to know the truth of what it's like writing a magic book and working on a book. And yeah, the why now is because it should have been 5 years ago. I just haven't had time, truly. I've always had to work on other people's projects. So this was just a nice time. As you know, Steve, I took some time off with my family for a couple of months, and I went to Vegas. We got a house there, and I wasn't really working on Vanishing Inc like I do when I'm at home. So it was really nice. I could just sit and write and work out what I wanted to say. And I think more importantly, why I wanted to say it. So yeah, why now is because it took long enough. It's basically it. And why a book? There's a few reasons for why a book, but I think there's always a perfect medium to teach the perfect thing. And for me, I could certainly do downloads. I could, you know, I'm very lucky. I'm one of the few magicians alive who has a team of people that if I decide I want to do downloads, we go, let's bring the cameras in, let's get going. But for me, writing a book was a better choice because I don't feel like I'm naturally articulate. So actually just putting a camera in front of me, I don't perform at my best. But if I can sit in front of a keyboard and keep rewriting something, I feel like I can teach it much better. So I didn't want to half-ass it, is basically the reason it's a book.
Yeah, and there was, I think that we're in a time now, aren't we? Where cause I think Vanishing Inc have been pivotal in this sort of thing. There was a lull, wasn't there, with when people were kind of saying magic books are dead, it's all going to be digital. And remember, there was that big period when everybody could get a torrent of kind of 500 magic books, and you kind of went. And I'm not going to lie to you, I have that time. You know, everybody kind of went, I could have all the magic books in the world, brilliant. And then you realise there's something inherently different about having all the magic books in some ropey PDF that's been taken on a 1990s, late 90s mobile phone.
And how many of them have you read, right? That's the thing with when you have this whole mess. I took 10 years ago now, I feel old. I moved to London for a couple of years, but I was still living with my parents back at the time. So I just would take a couple of books with me to London every few weeks. And I studied those much more than when I had, you know, all of these books at home. I just didn't read them. So it's actually really nice just to be able to focus on one or two books at a time.
And that goes back to a lot of questions I had. And actually the question I always have is just this sort of internal sort of journey of trying to find the best way to kind of boil it down, read from a book, create. And I have that thing you said. I mean, I try and recreate what you just said about kind of, I've got my books here, this is my office. I kind of sometimes I take one home and I go, right, this is the book. But then over a week or two, I go, no, actually, I'll take that one on because I need to look at that. And then next to my bed, I have about 30 books. And then I have like a secondary pile, which is, and you end up with this kind of staggered. So as a busy person, because you still do your research, right? You still doing your research, you're doing that stuff where you're how are you approaching that? It's a big question and it's a wide question. I know there's so much to say, but how do you find the time? And I mean that as in, do you structure it? Do you go, I'm going to spend this many hours a day doing that to stop you getting, and what's your approach to the nitty gritty of reading a book? Big question, next hour probably, but there you go.
Really big question, and yeah, there's no real answer to it. And I think
No.
if I gave you an answer, I would almost just be forcing one out that wasn't truthful. I think I read when I want to read. I don't read when
Okay.
I don't want to read. There are some periods where I might go a couple of months, like literally staring at this bookshelf, going, "I should probably read. I should probably research something." And sometimes I'm just too drained by the end of the day to be able to do that. There are other times I go, "This is the most important part of my house right now. I need to study, and I could spend all day." Sometimes I wish like somebody could just come in and take snapshots of what I'm doing when my card table is here, and there's 5 versions of Erdnase lying around. I'm going, well, why did Darwin say that when actually I know that Gordon Bruce believes this? And just like my mind is going crazy with all these things. So my solution is I never force it. I read magic when I want to read magic. I use this library here more for research than anything. So if I am working on let's say a new chop cup routine that's in my head right now, actually, well, what do I know about chop cups? What can I learn? What did Tarbell's too early for chop cups, but what's in Tarbell that I could apply? What cups and balls sequences are there that I could use in a chop cup routine, or all those things just come into play. Hang on, my dentist is calling me. Hilarious. So all of those things come into, that's when I use my library most, I think, actually. So there's no specific time. There's never any guilt if I don't read a magic book. It just, it comes when it comes. But I've been talking a lot because of something I say in the intro to my book is I think the magic world does value owning magic books a little too much over studying magic books. So I never buy a book just because I think it'll look nice on my shelf, or I never buy a book because I think I might read it later. Like, I buy books because I want to study that book. And sometimes I study it immediately after getting it. Other times it may take a little while, but I always have the best of intentions with it.
There's a couple of things there that thing about owning them, and don't get me wrong, I've bought books before that I go, they're just pretty, and sometimes that can draw me in of going, I just want to sit in front of it and open it and read things. But I think the danger is that what I've realized is that I've got some Marlowe stuff that looks pretty ropey. It's the kind of, the kind of serif type stuff that, and there's something wonderful about going into that, but they're sort of less beguiling. They kind of don't, or for some people, until of course, that there's kind of a charm to that. But I think that ownership thing is interesting in the collection thing, and it's interesting, and I think the self-awareness part of it is knowing that you can fall into that trap and kind of going, I want more. And I remember working at a collector's fair years and years ago before I was a magician, and someone came up to me, and I was working in a candle shop, and we had a stand at the collector, but we sold all these trinkets, this crap. And this guy come and picked up one of them, and he went, right, I want that one. Where are the others? And I said, well, there's one there. And I said, do you know what they are? And he goes, no, but I can see you can make a collection out of them.
Okay.
But it's that thing of the idea of collecting and having. And I think that is what collection is about a lot of the time. When you take it, it's a collecting of having and making time to actually sit and study. And I've been months without doing that and forgetting the joy of that, and kind of actually going into that place that you're saying of going, that thing when you're going from there to there and going into that sort of, in that whole of study is the flow of it. And I think we can forget. And some people, I think, maybe have never experienced it.
I'm sure. But, to each their own. There's this whole concept of an anti-library, right? Of having so many books that you recognize that there's so much more to learn. And I totally get that. And I guess, I'm lucky to have these here that I've collected over the years. And I do get that feeling. I can look amongst these books and go, wow, there's so much I could learn about magic if only there were more hours in the day. So I totally get why people buy lots of magic books. And look, I clearly have been guilty of it at some point in my past. But yeah, my big thing now is when I buy a book, I really try and study a book.
Yeah. Okay. So with all that, what's your process now? And again, I'm not after an answer, because I think from that I think the guilt, when you say guilt, That's a really important thing, because I think when you do have a lot of material, not just books, downloads, but we, as magicians, we've all got that. It's oh, I should be doing that, I should be doing that, and it's not feeling that guilt of not doing it all the time. And I think some people always say, I'm trying to do an hour a day, and it's just not realistic for some people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So go on.
One thing I've really felt some weight right now is you see all over Instagram of like, we're in a pandemic, we're not working as much, then we should be using this time to improve ourselves. And you've been great at helping people through this, but we don't have to use this time. There's no pressure to become the kind of people who just spend all of our spare time working on magic. So yeah, I think that's something that somebody needs to make very clear. There's no guilt if you don't want to use this time to improve your magic, but if you do, what a great opportunity.
I think that's huge, and it's because people are beating themselves up all over the place for having to work full-time jobs, and they see people, and people think that I'm working on magic all the time. That's great, like what I'm doing is learning tricks to review them so I can review them, and actually beat myself up a bit about not. I think to beat myself up a tiny bit's all right, because I can then go, right, I need to make some space to do what I love to do. There's that kind of thing that we can listen to that. Slightly the difference between shame and guilt, isn't it? A little bit of guilt's all right because you're looking at the behaviour you change, but feeling shamed for it and feeling not like a proper magician is a huge thing, and people need to alleviate that. And like you said at the beginning of lockdown, it was all like we can all, and you see magicians going, I'm loving lockdown, and you go, really? I'm sure I am for certain things, but it's let's acknowledge that the struggle a little bit and honor it.
Yeah, I agree. Now, that's not to use that as an excuse for like when we go out and perform, we should perform tricks that we haven't practiced or tricks we haven't perfected. Like, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, we don't have to use every spare moment to invest in magic. But yeah, as soon as we step in front of an audience, we should be absolutely on top form.
Yeah. So how do you that your knowledge just through years and years and years of kind of, you sort of straddle that thing a bit like me of being a hobbyist, researching it, and someone who performs and obviously has to have an eye on what works. So how did you boil that down to come up with you've got this book here, which isn't a massive book, which is a really good thing. I'm sure it would be so. I suppose the question is, how do you edit to get that kind of condensed thing and the tricks in it? The thing I really liked about it are the tricks in it aren't long, drawn out things. Obviously, you've got your signature piece, which has the, what's it called again, your signature piece with the glass...
Castle Jacks, with the glass assembly,
Yeah, I just read that this morning. I mean, but that's, like you said, you can break that into 3 separate pieces, and that's an act on its own. But the tricks are mostly as you would want them to be if you were performing. You don't go up to the table and do an 8 minute. You go up to the table and you might have to be really quick, and they've got that quick thing. So because you've not only boiled the thing down to a set of tricks, but you've also boiled those tricks down and down and down into kind of something that works. So what was that process like?
Yeah, that's just something that's always been part of my magic, actually, is I look at every trick I do, and first of all, I think, what am I trying to say with this trick? What am I trying to achieve? What even is this plot? And the obvious example, at least from the book, is the ace assembly. The ace assembly, like, what is that plot actually? And I wonder whether some magicians who perform that plot even know what the plot is, because you hear the language and the wording change throughout the performance. The aces change places within different cards, or the aces vanish from here, or the aces appear. Like, that's not what this is. That there has to be a fixed plot. It can't change halfway through. It can't be, sometimes the aces are transposing, sometimes they're vanishing, sometimes they're just collecting. It's just too confusing. So I always try and look at that. What is actually happening? And for that plot, I realized that actually what's happening is 3 cards are vanishing from wherever and reappearing in one other place to collect with the other. So let's say 3 aces are vanishing and appearing to collect with the last ace. Now, there are many different variations of the ace assembly plot, but in my mind, that's the perfect variation. Yeah. 3 aces vanish and collect with another ace. So now I know what that is. How can I then boil that down to the clearest effect? And for me, it was to take, it ended up being jacks, but that's irrelevant, but to take 4 signed jacks, put them into a wine glass, remove them one at a time, vanish each one as I remove it, and then when I go to take out the last jack, they're all back together in the white glass, all 4 Stein jacks. Now, to me, that is, and I'm going to use the word perfect, but I mean just perfectly for me, that is the perfect representation of that plot. But it's nothing like an ace assembly anymore. And if I showed that to you just straight up, you wouldn't say, oh, that's clearly an ace assembly. But that's just what became of it, because I stripped it back right to its core and then rebuilt it. And I think that's something that we could actually do with almost every plot we do. And I think most plots would benefit from it. So I think that that's quite clear throughout the whole book. There's a sandwich routine that I stripped the sandwich routine bare and then again rebuilt it. And that's just what I've always done with my magic. And the end result, I think, is the effect is always much cleaner. The effect is much more direct. Because of that, often the method is also more clean and more direct. Does that answer it? Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. And it goes to a question I want to get to from Alec in a minute, which fascinated me, that I read it this morning, and which really sort of boiled it down to that. But there's something you said, when you say the sandwich, is that the one you did in the trailer?
Yes. Yeah, it's called
Ghost. Yeah, and it's got that really, there's one move that most of your stuff, I think it's slighty, but it's doable. There's obviously your master push-off stuff, which is great to revisit, and I've been properly geeking out on that. But what's that? I'm going off piece here, but just for my own benefit, that double cull thing.
Yeah.
That's the...
So I have so much work on culling from the bottom of the deck, because when you cull a card, often you're culling a card out of place, right? So you're taking it from the middle of the deck and then putting it to the bottom or wherever, typically the bottom. And the underused version of that is the reverse of it, is to be able to take a card from the bottom, or really anywhere, but from the bottom for now, and position it somewhere in the deck.
Yeah.
So that's what I played with a lot over the years, and I have so much unpublished work on this whole idea of the reverse cull. And it's not that I'm holding it back, it's just, it's a tough move to find a way to present to people, because it's such a small move, and the things I have with it are not exactly revolutionary, but it's a really useful thing to be able to position a card in the deck. Obviously I'm exposing it there. So as part of that sandwich routine, I have a way of culling 2 cards from the bottom of the deck in one action. And that's all about the streamlining that I like to do, really. Is you could, for that trick, you could bottom cull 2 cards individually, but instead I wanted to find a way to cull the bottom 2 cards at the same time. Yeah.
And I wanted to highlight that, I think, as well, because it kind of it shows that it is work that requires work, but there's a streamlinedness to it. And it reminded me of I remember reading a John Carney in Carnucopia, I think, or maybe no, Secrets, I think. He's got a cups and balls routine which strips out the kind of, does the almost opposite of what I do with the cups and balls, is drag it out for another half an hour. But usually for humor purposes and not magical purposes. But that thing of being brave enough to go, look, we've done this for so many years like this, like you say about an ace assembly. And Guy Hollingworth did a similar thing last night with the ace assembly of kind of, it might need to add a bit of boldness, or we might need to add something, but that really makes it go, look, this is happening and then that's happening, rather than this is happening, and there's a thing here, because we love it, we're magicians. But it's being brave enough, I think, to say, okay, we can sort of break and rebuild things a little bit.
I think it's fine. You know what I think about is the perfect example of that is the Chop Cup. I think it was Al Wheatley. If I get that name wrong, I apologize. But I think it was Al Wheatley who took the cups and balls that have been around for hundreds of years and then went, no, actually, this would be better with 1 cup. And that was the 1950s. It took that long for somebody to go, I think we can make a better trick here. And you know what? By just having 1 cup and 1 ball, we can gimmick this in a better way. Like, that's genius level thinking in my mind. And the fact that it took so long to get there is fascinating to me.
Yeah, and it's similar to what's happening with the virtual shows at the moment. I mean, I've done quite a few now. I was a denier at first. I was one of the kind of, I don't have to do that. I'll just do my video stuff and then go, oh, I'm not actually making any money. So actually, I've really enjoyed that process of kind of being able to go, actually, I've got this to play with, and not do it in a way that, obviously, there's obvious stuff going on. And the Video Chat Magic guys have been great, and obviously your Connected series is really food for thought. But to actually, I mean, yesterday I did a 10-year-old party, and to really have to go, right, how can I I did this, and I did a video on it yesterday, and using things like mystery blocks, there's too much, something with the Lego or some Rubik's Cube magical stuff that isn't necessarily this mentalism that everybody's doing that has to be put your phone up, and obviously I did a bit of that. But I think I think we're in danger of, if we're not careful doing that with the virtual stone, we're starting to create rules now, and it's so you can kind of just have a blank slate and just see what looks good on the camera.
Yeah, and what a great opportunity as well. Like, I use this word a lot in Vanishing Inc meetings, like, internally, about how we have to become agile. Like, that's probably the most important thing we can be this year at Vanishing Inc is agile. We have to be able to go, the world has changed really quickly. Magicians need us to change quickly because they need our support to be doing these virtual shows. So we're always thinking about agility. And I think magicians also have to become agile. And that's why there was a lot of resistance early on from magicians saying, oh, I don't want to do Zoom shows. I don't want to do virtual shows because live is where it's at. But, we kind of have to retrain, and we have to move with the times. In some cases, unfortunately, I know some people don't think that the Zoom show and the virtual show is the future. But for now, I think it's either retrain in this or totally refocus in another area.
Yeah, and for me, it was definitely fear. That's what it was. It's that fear of, how long did it take me to get a stage show, to be comfortable on a stage? And even though I have a comfort on video in this sort of respect, I was really uncomfortable performing on video, and how I didn't want to go back. I don't want to be nervous again. I don't want to be flawed again. I don't want to know that things might go wrong and have to write new scripts around tricks. And it was definitely a fear that was stopping me from being that vulnerable again. When vulnerable, putting a stage show, performing for the first time, performing a card trick for the first time is such a vulnerable thing to do.
Yeah, I agree. Now I have to say, it's almost unfair of me to say these things because I haven't done any virtual shows just because I've been so busy helping Vanishing Inc become agile. That has to be my priority because there are so many people relying on me to do that. So yeah, take what I say with a pinch of salt, but it's pretty impressive how magic has reinvented itself though over the last year.
Yeah, but I think you're still experiencing that vulnerability because you look at the first conference that was put together pretty quickly. The live conference you did.
Yeah.
And you had to. I think that's exactly the same as performing. You've got a brand that people trust. You're putting together something new. It's all the same stuff, which could have quite easily gone south quickly. There was a lot to talk about there. So I think it's the same thing, really.
Yeah, and what's funny with that, just like I think anything that you learn, that was our first kind of real virtual online event that we had done. We did something last year for our top customers at Christmas where it's just basically this with me and Josh just talking live. But we didn't have a clue about the technology back then. No. And now I look back, I have no idea how that thing hung together. Like technically, we were so lucky. That was just crazy that it even worked and we managed to pull it off. And now, it taught us so many lessons. And now Masterclass, Vanishing Masterclass Live is really solid and stable. And now we're gearing up to present the conventions, the Magi Fest and the session in a virtual format as well as live as well. So yeah, I feel like we've come a long way because of the agility that we try and put into it.
Yeah, and that flexibility and agility, I think is so important. I want to go back to what we sort of mentioned earlier, and I'm reading. I'm kind of looking at the screen a minute, just some questions. Because Alec mentioned he sent me a copy of a blog about. Let me just try and find it. Sorry about this. I'm just going to clear Windows.
Well, if you want, while you're looking, one of the questions you asked that I didn't answer was about why is the book so small? It's not a big book full of 100 ideas or anything like that. And the simple reason for that is Pitt Hartling kind of gave us all permission to do that, right? With Card Fictions. That was, I think, one of the first books that was just, here's my performance pieces. I'm not filling this with the filler that other magic books do. So really it's thanks to Pitt for setting that format. So I could have filled this book with 100 effects, but instead I just wanted to publish my very best.
Has that been something you've consciously decided? Because I noticed that with a few of the Vanishing Inc books, with Ryan's book, and it was like you felt like you could learn it. And I always remember, one of the first DVDs not the first DVDs that did that, but the first DVDs that I got, and I talk about this a lot, this Bill Goodwin DVD, Reflections. It was like Dan and Dave put it together. It was 8 or 10 things, and we were so used to getting these triple DVD sets that had like 35 things on them, which is great, but you kind of get a bit, if you start watching. I remember the Bill Malone DVDs; they're stunning. The first DVDs, not even on the last one, Volume 4, it had stunning stuff, but to get there, you had to go through all that stuff. So
it's a decision, and actually, it comes. At least on video, it comes more from Josh than me. But Josh is always saying, like, we shouldn't be doing these 4-5 hour downloads when actually we can put the same content in an hour. So that's why Masterclass Live is an hour of performance and then 30 minutes of Q&A for 3 weeks, because we know that the performer could easily talk for 3 hours on that same amount of material, but instead let's just get them to tell us the most important things about it, and then we can use the Q&A to go into more detail if we need to. So yeah, it's definitely a decision. And since Pitt's book, lots of authors have come to us and said, I want to do a card fiction style book, and I think that's just because of how effective Pitt's book is. The other one that we get, just since we're talking about this kind of format, is since Tom Stone published his books, Vortex and Maelstrom, people come to us and go, I want to do a book full of like half-finished ideas. And often I feel like they don't get it. Like, that's not what makes, yeah, it's the easy way. But like, what makes Tom's half-finished ideas good is that they are essentially finished ideas in everybody else's mind. And they're only unfinished because Tom's mind won't allow him to say something's finished.
Yeah. Yeah, no, those books are full of good stuff. I could publish one of them books every day. Unfinished ideas.
Yeah.
One-liners.
Exactly.
What was that Max Maven book that he put out years ago that had nothing? Was it called Nothing or so? It was the one that just had one line every page.
Oh, no, that's the Elders of... If Max is watching this, he's going to kill me. I should just go find it and read the title. The Protocols of the Elders, something along those lines. Yeah.
Oh, is that it? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm getting him mixed up with his.
He has a DVD called Nothing, but yeah, the whole concept of Max's book is to, it's just for each page is a quote about how magic is dead. Yes. So Max was ahead of Daniel Madison.
Yeah. Right, I found my thing. Right, so, and actually what you were talking about, sort of boiling everything down there. So Alex talked about first principles, right? He sent me this blog, First Principles, Core Fundamentals, Principles that a magician could have to be successful. So this is almost what you're saying about that. The boil it down. What are the, and I'm putting you on the spot here. I'm not expecting a kind of answer off the top of your head, but the principles that a magician should think, right, I want to be a successful magician. Now, what that means, I don't mean a kind of successful social media magician, or TV magician, but core principles of going into magic you think you should have to kind of get there in a more robust way.
Should we talk about first principles first, and then I'll kind of integrate it? And you're probably the man more than me. I mean, all I know about first principles essentially comes from Elon Musk talking about it. I'm a big Elon Musk fan, but not his idea, when it goes back to Aristotle and before, and you should probably be talking about this, not me. This is not your kind of thing. But the idea of first principles is saying, well, let's take Elon Musk as the obvious one of going, well, he wanted to fly a rocket to Mars. So there are two ways he could have done it. One is he could have gone, well, let's look at the other rockets to see how they did it. And you have to make these assumptions and analogies based on other rockets. And that's one way of doing it. And that's what we do when we're creating magic tricks, right? We're going like, how did Vernon perform the sandwich trick? Let's have a look and see. But the problem with that is Vernon might not have been doing the sandwich trick the best way. We might just be assuming that Vernon was doing it the best way. So with Elon, instead of saying, how did they previously do it? He said, what's the best way of doing it? And he just started from the core. He stripped everything down and looked at the core. So, for example, one of the things was that they never landed rockets back on Earth. They would just take them off and become space debris. Whereas he was like, well, if we could land it, we could now reuse it. And now it's cheaper. We can do more with it. And that's the whole first principles design philosophy of saying, instead of looking at what came in the past and assuming it was right, what if we actually take the trick and boil it back up? Or in the case of magic, what if we take it and work on our own principles to rebuild it? Did I get that right?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, and it's that kind of understanding that we're standing on the shoulders of giants, but we don't have to stand on them and do exactly what they did first. And you can implicitly get the inspiration and the knowledge from them without having to just take that and add more onto it. And I think, again, it goes back to magic where you're kind of taking the ingredients and using them but then adding more, so the classic thing is, the second trick in your book, which is a kind of triumph, I think it's the second one, the triumph effect, which you've got 3 bits. It's a quick trick, it gets there, but you've taken something that, that was there with Bannon and people like that, and kind of taken them back, but still used that learning. And it's kind of paradox, because I think you're not explicitly taking their thing and making it better. You're taking the ingredients of what made that work and streamlining it, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. And giving myself permission to not make assumptions based on previous creators that it was the best way of doing it. And that's not to disrespect previous creators. It just means that I'm allowed to give myself permission to be right, as well as leaning on the standard, the shoulders of giants. So actually, maybe this is why you asked the question, and I'm going to open the book because it's easier for me to get this accurate. But I have one essay in the book, and it's called "Making Magic Bulletproof."
Good. I'm glad you mentioned it, because I don't have to look now.
Oh, there we go. Happy to help.
Yeah. Yes.
But I list out, I guess, what are the equivalent of first principles in magic. And I realize that when you talk about principles in magic, the first reaction that a lot of people have is, well, magic's an art form. You can't start putting principles in art forms. But actually, I think you can have some core truths in magic. And once you know what the rules are, then you know whether to break them or not. You don't have to always stick to these rules, but at least if you know what your own rules are, what your own principles are, it makes it easier. So, for example, one thing I have here is remove abruptness from moves. Like, I see so many magicians control a card with a pass, and they have this moment where it's just a slight abruptness. So instead, what if we can do a control where that doesn't happen? What if we can find the right timing just to get rid of that abruptness? And that's not just the sharpness of the hands or the shoulders or the body, but it's also about finding the right time for it. And it's just about removing everything that is a tell and creates tension and moves focus onto the deck or the object. Another one, this is kind of obvious, but it's worth stating, is be authentic. And by that I mean, if you are a guy or a girl or a person who has never played poker, well, don't do poker demonstrations. It just doesn't feel authentic, but you see it all the time. Like, if you don't know the rules of Hold'em, I don't want to see you do a Hold'em trick. It's as easy as that. And what else do we have? Like, become adaptable. This is something I don't see all that often, actually. And I bet you learned this from the street and also from walk around performances. Is people want to create a conversation with the magician, and you can adapt to that conversation. So a perfect example is multiple selection is a routine I perform a lot. And every now and again, somebody will be like, well, wouldn't it be amazing if the card appeared in my ear, or whatever they say. But giving myself permission to be adaptable allows me to do that. And that's a core principle I think about with all of my tricks. Are there points where I'm allowed to adapt and be free of? And I could keep going of these things in the book. The one that I don't think is talked about enough in magic is overlapping methods. And the trick you mentioned earlier, the Castle Jacks routine, while you can perform those tricks separately, the trick is much stronger. The sum of its parts are much stronger than the individual tricks, I think, because I overlap the methods between tricks. So during the first phase, I'm actually setting up for the second phase. And you were at the session, you might remember this. I did a lecture where I showed the timeline on the screen of the method and the effect. And the method was working on a totally different timeline to the effect. Yeah. And I can do that because I'm always thinking about how do I overlap methods. And I haven't heard enough magicians talk about that in writing or lectures. But by doing that, you open up so much more opportunity because you're doing sneaky stuff when the audience are not even expecting you to be doing anything related to what you were just doing sneakily.
It's weird that this stuff isn't talked about. I mean, I know that it is. Tamarix obviously talks about this kind of thing quite a lot, and we're getting more theory based now, I think. And like you said, it's theory informing practice. It's not theory for the sake of, is a word I can never, academicizing that. Making it academic. Because there's a lot of that. Obviously, I was talking to someone about that the other day about people kind of making it sound super academic just to sound clever. But I think there's a balance, isn't there, of going. Theory does inform what we do, and going back to that first principles, I think that you're absolutely right. It's if I'd have known, if I'd have been given permission learning magic, rather than this sort of dogmatic, the big problem on the forums that I always talk about, people have these dogmatic rules, which aren't principles. They're rules that make them sound like they're giving something when they maybe haven't got as much to give.
And often do they even know what they're saying? Have they broken those rules to find out whether or not they are true? There's this. Have you seen the Neil deGrasse Tyson masterclass? I think you'd enjoy it.
No, I really want to see it. Yeah.
You should. I think you'd really enjoy it. But he talks about this interesting thing about. I'm going to get this wrong now. It's been months since I watched it. But he describes the difference between a theory and a thesis. Thesis.
Yeah.
And actually, magic theory is pretty much never theory. It's just thesis. It's just an assumption that a magician has, because we've not proved it. We've not done the experimentation and the tests to prove it. And that, in some ways, is the problem with magic theory. Is it's almost entirely based on assumption, and that's why I really bought into to what Josh did. Joshua J did this whole. He worked with a statistics team, and actually did surveys about magic. Are you more impressed with this trick if I tell you that the magician is a world-class card magician, or are you more impressed with this trick by this guy who is just a kid off the street? And looking at all those different things so that we can then use those findings to discover how to create our own magic theories instead of just making assumptions.
Yeah, and because Gustav talks about this a lot in his book, doesn't he? And I think he worked with Josh in a team with him. And
no, he worked in a different team, but Josh and Gustav have been doing some stuff together recently.
Yeah.
Josh worked with a university in America to do this, but the stuff that Gustav is doing is very parallel to this. And there's some other people, Matt Baker, the Jerks, are all starting to do these really interesting things. The more famous one recently is about the crosscut force. Lay audiences are finding the crosscut force is the most effective force, and that goes against
more than a classic force.
And I'm sure you will find magicians on the forum somewhere going, I would never use the crosscut force. That's one of my rules because it doesn't feel fair enough. Well, actually, turns out it feels way more fair than a classic force, which still blows my mind, but fine.
Well, it does, but it creates that dissonance, doesn't it? Because for years we've learned and felt a certain thing, we're getting that challenge. So to go with that dissonance and like you said, be agile and go, okay, well, maybe I've been wrong for 20 years is a superpower, really, I think, with magic, to question, to critically think yourself and also the theory. And to question people like Vernon and Tamaris. They're not...
that's why I bring it up. It doesn't exactly fit with the whole first principles philosophy, but it's connected in that we shouldn't always assume that what we've read is 100% accurate throughout magic's history, for the reason that they might not have tested it enough, but also times have changed very quickly. Some of these magic books are 100 years old, and some of these tricks are still in use now. So surely audiences have changed in the last 100 years.
Yeah. In the last 10 years,
in the last year, right?
Yeah. Well, they're not here anymore.
Well, yes. But more so than ever, I think we see how quickly people adapt and how magicians... I think this has been a lesson this year for magicians, that we do need to be more agile and plan ahead more than we ever have.
Yeah, I think so. And once you're in that, and it's a really freeing thing to go, oh, I don't know. It's okay not to. And like you go up with the books, that reminder that we don't know everything, to be students all the time. And I think that's what draws us into learning, and why magic companies like Vanishing Inc are so successful, because we're drawn and we're wired to learn, and that's what we do. But unfortunately, sometimes we don't give ourselves time and freedom to sit with it.
I think if there can be one explanation of why we have succeeded and grown so much, it's that truly, at mine and Josh's hearts, what we want out of Vanishing Inc is to make magic a better place, to make magicians better, and to give them better tools. And I don't see that with a lot of other companies in general, not just magic, but I don't see that kind of heart that we have. And what's interesting is that's rubbed off on the whole team. And it's amazing to be, I was just in the UK warehouse this week to help with the Big Friday sale. And it's amazing to see, like, those guys are sending out tricks and going, oh yeah, this guy's going to really learn. I know this customer, he's going to really learn. This is going to really help him, and stuff like that. It's that care has come throughout the whole team. And it's just because I think we really do want magic to be a better place.
Yeah, well, you're all magicians, aren't you? People say people that come from that. And when we all know the companies and can feel the companies that have taken on people that are magicians, but they might be really good at the business side of it as consultants. And you can strip the soul out of it, and it's just getting that balance of being successful and doing what you've got to do, isn't it? But
yeah, exactly.
Having the values in there.
And I realized as I said that it sounded like some kind of like puff sales piece, but it's it's true. It's just, yeah, by wanting to make magic better, I think some ways we can, even if it's just a little bit.
Yeah. I'm going to just go through some questions because they kind of cover. I think you've covered this really. What criteria this is from Tom Rolfe. What criteria does Andy use to determine if an effect will fit his performance style? Do you have a set criteria, or can you just feel it?
Yeah, it's interesting. I see that a lot on. I don't really read magic forums so much anymore, but when I used to, I would always see that phrase, but it's not really my style. What is it? I don't even know what that means. Honestly, I can't compute what that's not my style. I mean, maybe you don't like the trick, maybe it doesn't appeal to you. But I'm not looking at what's my style. I'm looking at what's relevant for me, what feels right for me. Maybe that is style. Maybe that's what it does mean. But yeah, the criteria for me is often, do I love the trick? Does that love come across to the audience? Is it deceptive? And that's such a key thing. I'm never thinking about, is this trick entertaining as the first thing. I'm thinking about, is this trick deceptive? Is this trick something people will remember for a long time? Can I then make it entertaining and interesting or informative or whatever I want to add to it? So yeah, I guess what I just described is style, but I wonder whether a lot of the times when I see people saying that's not my style, they're not really analyzing what they mean by that.
And maybe also not stripping the trick back to its first principles in a way of kind of going, if someone publishes the trick in a style, and I mean, one of the things I think about is Get Out, the Vanishing Inc Get Out thing. Mm-hmm. Now, you could take the principles of that, or I think it's usable for most people in a kind of way, but if it doesn't quite, you can take that idea and change the printing or do something with it that may fit something you're doing.
Yeah, a great example.
But and I think, but style to me, I think it comes down to values and what. And one of my, I think I wrote down a few, after I was sent this thing, a few of those first principles for me of being a magician. And one of the first ones for me is self-awareness. It's having an understanding of what, and it took me a long time to get there, seeing a trick that you might connect to just because you think it's great and going, actually, can I really see myself performing that in the way that I know I perform on stage? Mm-hmm. And there's versatility to that. But I think that, for me, starts getting close to what style is, which is exactly what you were saying. Is it a good trick? Do you feel the trick when you read it and go, oh, that's great? Which is number one, isn't it?
Also, another thing I find when I'm selecting tricks is I try and research them really back to their core. And I don't just mean that stripping it back to its core, but also who was the first person to create this? And Tamariz talks about this. I think it's his third veil of history, is the audience can feel my knowledge, and that really speaks to them. And I think that's true. When you watch Tamariz perform, he's an expert. Yeah. And that comes across, and I think it embellishes and adds to the effect. But another reason for understanding that and understanding the core principles is that actually, if something goes wrong with that trick, you can also find your way out of it. And that's why, like technology tricks, I do a couple of technology tricks, and they're the ones that I've programmed myself. And that's because I feel much more confident using those, because I know if it goes wrong, I know exactly why it went wrong and how to fix it. I also use a couple of other people's apps, but I have a much more confidence in using them when I know exactly how it works and why it works.
Yeah, I think about two things I think about when I felt really vulnerable is Triumph. Triumph was one of those tricks that for years I did it. I just couldn't work out why it worked. I kind of got the basic, but I just, and if I got stuck halfway through that, I'm done. I just have to throw the cards away and get, curl the face up, face downs or whatever. And also the Rubik's Cube. It's like there's these Rubik's Cube, and I'm a cube geek now, at the late age of 47, but these tricks get released and they say to them, you don't have to learn the true cube to perform this trick. And you go, are you joking? Well, I'm going to get you do one thing and you'll just, so you have to kind of go that fundamental thing of outs, basically, but a proper out meaning.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you might be there once when I had to take a Rubik's Cube apart backstage. Just before a show, because someone backstage had messed with my Rubik's Cube and I can't do it. And I literally have to take a screwdriver to the Rubik's Cube really quickly. And you're right. And every time I look at a Rubik's Cube, I think exactly that. But it's the same thing of, I think the audience can feel it, right? About being authentic, like I was talking about. I think the audience can probably feel who can do a Rubik's Cube and who can't, even though you never say it.
Yeah, you kind of look a bit confused. And I just love the idea of you taking this cube apart like a 1980s schoolboy.
Yeah, that's how you solve it, right?
To your friends that you can do, take the stickers off and put them on really badly again.
Yeah, exactly.
That's very funny. And I think it goes back to what we were saying about one of the problems with the abundance mentality, which we've all got with things like, we've all sort of flipped through Netflix, is to actually, how hard it is with those books behind me to take one trick and sit with it for a day, rather than go on to the next one, and I think it's kind of separating ourselves from what we've got to what we need to do. But
you know what I feel already is people, this is so quick in this process, people are already sending me variations of my own tricks, right, from in the books that have just come out. And I never really want to reply with too much. Good for them. Like the whole idea of a magic book, for my mind, is to spark inspiration. So good for them. But I always suggest that, isn't it best to try it how the author intended first? Because I bet they've been through that variation before you. So I always want to try and encourage that. But great, have your own variation, but at least remember that I've spent 5-10 years performing this trick, and I may have learned some things from it. So yeah, that always feels weird to me when I get variations so quickly.
It is weird, isn't it? But that to me is a different sport. It's a different game. It's like that whole idea of looking at a puzzle, trying to do the puzzle differently or arguably better. I remember seeing a Michael Amar lecture in Sheffield years ago, and he was doing his egg thing, and he broke the egg into the thing at the end. And someone said, do you have to use a real egg? Apparently you can make one with glycerin and a tiddlywink. And I kind of went, that just completely, and that was a genuine thing that happened. And I was thinking, why just buy an egg? It's just, yeah.
I agree completely. That you just, give this stuff a go first before coming up with too much of your own.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go for it. Look, if you have to go, I said an hour, we might run over a little bit, but if you have to go, just tell me and we'll.
No, I'm good. My time is, I've got nothing else to do.
Is that right? Got a couple of weeks off, have you?
We've hung out once in the last year, so this is fun.
Yeah, that was good, wasn't it? Yeah, we had breakfast. Yeah, in between lockdowns. So
yes, while we were allowed. Yeah.
Okay, I like this. Having worked with and seen so many great magicians. This is from John Green. How have you learned to get over any anxieties when showing or performing for them? This is something I really want to hear about. I've followed you from the beginning, Andy. This is from John Green, as I said. And I remember how nervous you sometimes were. I don't see this happening as much now.
Oh, well, hi, John. Yeah, and thank you. That is a great question. Yeah, I feel sorry for my wife the most, actually, that she's met all of these great magicians, and you've stayed with us, so many other great magicians. And then she sees me perform, and she's like, well, everybody else is way better than you. So it's just the way it is. I don't really have an answer. I don't think to how I got over anxiety of performing for, I guess, well-known or established magicians, just because I'm very lucky that because of my job, I get to work with so many of them. When you book 2 magic conventions a year, that's like 30 performers. So they just have become friends over the years. But you're right, I used to be a nervous performer, and I think the reason for that was I was probably performing for magicians too soon, I guess. When I was performing, say, at the session back in the early days, I hadn't really lectured all that much, and the session is actually one of the harder conventions to lecture because the audience are so smart themselves. So Guy Hollingworth in his lecture yesterday said something really interesting, which was, I'm not here to lecture or teach you, I'm just here to show you what I do. And I always had that in the back of my head, that kind of thing about, like, I can't teach these people anything, so I'll just show them what I'm doing. but yeah, it was probably too soon. That's why I was nervous, probably doing it too soon. Now, I perform for magicians very regularly, and I lecture very frequently. Pre-pandemic, I was lecturing. Let's say this way: without doing virtual lectures, I've already done, I think, 20 lectures this year. Before the pandemic, it was a packed early few months. So time is the answer for me. Time and feeling, and gaining confidence in my own work. Basically, it was the time that I needed. Yet, unfortunately for me, I was lecturing and performing for magicians when actually I should have just been getting better at magic and more comfortable with magic.
And I think that it's now in the end, and people ask me about performing for lay people as well, because you get some people that get caught in that trap of learning, and actually get so late that they get so scared of performing for anyone.
Yeah.
That some people will never do it, and it's a sad thing, because I think for me what happens is that when you learn a sleight or a trick or a move, you can just do it for hours. You can do it again and again and again. When you practice a show, you do it once, and then you might not be able to do it for a couple of weeks in front of an audience. So the process seems so slow, and you're used to that almost like that speedy process. And that for some people, and that's kind of why I started doing the streaks. I thought I want to practice this as much as possible, and I can't do it getting the old corporate gig every 6 months, which was what was happening.
That's why walk around magic is so good, right?
Great.
Becoming a busy walk around magician beats out any nerves that I could have. Because you're doing so many gigs so quickly, and you're performing for 10, 15 different groups. And the best part was tweaking the material as I went. That was so much fun.
Yeah, it's such an opportunity, because I remember when I did stand up, I was getting one open spot every 2 months, and I just got too frustrated. I started getting there, and then for magic it's harder. There isn't really open spot nights for magicians, is there? I mean,
you're going to bring yours back. You should bring yours back.
Yeah, definitely. First opportunity, without a doubt. I mean, it's a lovely night, and obviously you've done it, haven't you? And I always try and give someone an open spot in that.
Yeah. I don't think you should ever forget just how important it is that you can give people that opportunity for stage time. Like that, to me, my balloon act started at your show. Was
that the last time you did
it? No, it's luckily I've done it a few times, but that was the first proper gig I did my balloon act was there, and it was awful.
Was it?
I did it once at Kerry's party. She had a birthday party. Kerry's a mutual friend of ours, and then after that, the first time I did it at your
was that the first time?
And it wasn't great, right? But it was an open spot, and it gave me the ability to work on something and try out new things, and give me the confidence to try out something. So yeah, you should never forget just how important putting on that kind of show is. And I wish more people would put on magic nights, because they are a real good opportunity for magicians.
Yeah, thank you. And isn't it interesting? You said, you say looking back on it, it was awful or bad, but it went really well. And that's the thing we've got to remember as well. Steve Nids, another mutual friend, sent me a video of my own performance doing the Evening of Deception with you guys, and I'd been performing for quite a long time then, and I couldn't watch it. And he was like, and he said, "That was great. You should watch it." I was just like, "No, I can't watch it," because to me, you see, and again, that's another thing. I'm just, the reason I'm saying it is people will, when they first go out, maybe feel it was awful, maybe look back and go, but we see a very different thing from the audience, and it's kind of being easy with that, I think.
Yeah, John Archer said something to me once after a bad gig when we were on the lineup together, and I just didn't go too well. And it didn't go awful, but it was pretty bad. He was like, "Well, your bad gigs are never as bad as you think they are, but in the same time, your good gigs are never as good as you think they are." And it's kind of perfect. It's a perfect thing to keep in mind at both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, it's a self-awareness thing. The amount of times I've seen people come off stage and go, "Yes, I stormed it," and you're like, "Are you looking at the same audience as me?"
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, there's definitely humility being one of those core things as well, I think.
That's for sure, yeah.
Andy Keane, how do I get purchase of this past my wife? Talking about your book, having spent so much in the Vanishing sale.
Let me say this, free copy. I bought a whole collection of Carl Purvis books. 350 books. I managed to get them past my wife because she happened to be asleep. It's like, can't see to sleep on the sofa. And I managed to sneak the whole thing in. However, I'm sure she wouldn't have cared, but she doesn't even know still after all these years.
I'll send you a little link. I literally have done that. It's awful, isn't it? When I was married, and it's not like my wife was like wouldn't let me do it, but it's just I think that guilt and shame. I remember coming back from Blackpool, and on the way to Blackpool, I was like, "Oh, it's going to be rubbish because I'm skinny at the moment," and then having to walk past with like £400 of books I'm probably not going to read, and I remember putting them in the back room, like.
Yeah, and the truth is, my wife would be nothing but happy for me, but still,
of course.
Are you going to tell the story of when you bought 52 Memories from me at Blackpool?
No. No, but I do tell the story quite often. I told my son that story, my 10-year-old son. I told him that story.
It's a great story.
And he just could not stop laughing. I would. Unfortunately, if I did, YouTube would have to sort of make the video. But we'll bring it up sometime, Andy, so to speak.
Something for the Christmas special.
Maybe we could relive the story. Maybe we could.
Maybe we won't.
Almost. Oh dear. Yes. So people can ask me about that, and I will never ever tell anybody. But you go ahead, Andy. Maybe put it in the foreword of one of the reprints or something.
You know what? I should. We need to reprint that soon. Actually, it's sold out again. Third printing sold out. So we'll reprint soon.
Oh man, that book. Tell everybody briefly what it is. 50 Memories. I cried. That opening the introduction of that book just broke me.
Did you meet Jack?
I didn't know Jack. No, it's a bit before I thought turned up.
So Jack Parker was a friend of mine, a very close friend, and he was an exceptional magic creator. And yeah, he found out that he had cancer, and he only had a few months to live. And I'd always said that I wanted to write a book of his material because this guy had received such a great reputation amongst the, let's say, underground. That's not a thing. There's no underground in magic, but amongst the magicians, the tastemakers of magic, really looked to Jack as one of the best creators of card magic. It was about a decade ago, maybe a little longer. And yeah, when we found out that he had cancer, I had to write this book of his work. Had to, as in it was inside me that I had to write it. Yeah. And it's still, although it was my first big book, it's still probably my most popular book, and I'm so proud of it.
It's an absolute stunner. It was, I think, my introduction to those kind of slightly off kilter ways of doing stuff, but just with a kind of feeling of it works. And just the creativity in it and the humility. He was someone that wasn't massively egotistical. So, those people unfortunately can be forgotten if they weren't plastering themselves. Social media was in his early days. So I think now it's so even more important that people find that work.
Yeah. And his little insider scoop is, and the next book is finished because the 52 Memories was 52 tricks. And they were tricks that Jack and I selected to be published, but he published created hundreds of other tricks, and we kind of secretly between the two of us agreed that there would be another collection of magic.
Great.
We never said how many tricks it would be, but there were some tricks he gave me that he wanted me to eventually publish, and it turned out that there are 52 more excellent tricks, and
nice.
They come out soon. 52 Explorations. It's called.
Look at that! Wow. So when's that?
Well, it's finished. The file has been saved on my computer for maybe a year or so, but it's just we haven't fitted it into the schedule yet. But it's ready to go. So maybe next year, definitely next year. I'm committing to that. Definitely next year.
Yay! Nice. You've heard it here first. Nice. Brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to carry on, but we can. If you got to go, you just got to say. I think we've answered. Gary asked about your favorite mediums, and I think we kind of covered that with books and
yeah, my favorite medium is the right medium. Basically, that's sometimes it's video, DVD, whatever.
Yeah, and that's from Gary Amber. This is Mr. Harmon. Great video. Vanishing Inc, my favorite magic dealer. Their customer service is amazing. I think Mr. Harmon is a young magician. I think he mentioned something the other day, but I could be wrong about that. Here's my question for him. Can you describe and discuss some of the tricks in the book? Also, are the tricks in the book card tricks or are they non-card tricks? Now, I'm going to answer, I think we've discovered that they're card tricks and they're different kind of trick. But and I think you have answered this question somewhere else, but what do you have a favorite or a couple of favorites that you kind of go to? It's not an easy question.
it's not an easy question because there are so many different performance styles that I cover in the book, from parlor to walk around to formal close up to stage. So yeah, I don't really have a specific favorite of all. I mean, I don't really have favorites of anything in my life, if I'm honest. I change
No.
change my mind too quickly. But there's a trick to look out for is Edward G. Brown's, my version of Edward G. Brown's 12-card thought transposition, which is a trick I dug out from a very old Edward G. Brown book and updated it. And it's a trick I love to perform because somebody is thinking of a card that the magician genuinely doesn't know what they are thinking of. And that card is made to travel from one person's hands to another person's hands, even though those cards never touch. So it's a really fun routine. I didn't explain that very well, but I think you get the idea.
You explained it perfectly, and I think, excuse me, it's I saw you perform it, and again, I kind of like the fact in a way that it's because sometimes the feeling with books isn't there that you kind of get the end's kind of like I need to feel, but it's not. It's that sort of peach at the end, which I'm really glad I just finished it before this, and we can mention. So just to summarise, I'm just going to let people know. So the book, just on the to answer that question, as a reader, I thought the book, it's got, obviously it finishes with the stand-up card magic. It's at the table stuff, which goes into your master push-off, which is a kind of really good motivation to learn that master push-off as well, which you've got a whole chapter on. The beginning is kind of stand-up, sort of quicker tricks, but no less involved, but that work in that way. And I think for me, and I'm going to do a full review with some sort of demo stuff on it, but for me, I don't think I was surprised, but it's so commercial. You're picking up on why the tricks work as well, and why they wouldn't work in certain ways, and picking up little, even the little things like, when you give people free Sharpies, there's that dead time when they hand them back, to just tell them to put them under the chair. If you lose a couple of Sharpies, so what? It's that keep movement, which kind of goes back to core fundamentals as well. And I loved it. I think it's a great book, and I think you should be very, very proud of it.
Thanks, Steve.
And it's pretty, which always helps.
Always. Have you seen the deluxe yet?
I know. And there was a question. Somebody wanted the deck. Look at that. Don't, because I haven't got it.
Look at that.
Don't show me. Here's you going, the books don't have to be pretty. You can, look at that.
Look at that, Steve.
I know. Don't.
So proud of it.
There's nothing there for me.
First time I saw it was when we did the book launch, the live.
I know.
Launch. I'd seen. These just happened to be. It's all around my desk because I've been talking about them the last few days. But yeah, that's all I'd seen, and it's nothing like the end result. This was just a proof. So to get to that, I was so happy when I saw it on the launch.
Oh, it must be a lovely feeling.
It just feels so nice. Yeah.
Yeah. And look, you get 2 decks of cards in there. Someone did mention, I'll just name them because it's nice to say people's names. I can't find it now. I think it was John Green again about the are they going to be for sale? Because he tried to win them. The decks of cards, are they going to be for sale as?
So I'll give you the truthful answer of that is we didn't really produce them thinking that people would want to buy them separately. Like, who wants to buy a deck of cards with my name on them? You know what I'm like. I have this kind of thing of, who wants to buy my magic? Who wants to? So we don't know is the answer until we can get all the deluxes sent out and know how many we've got left. But yeah, if we can, we will, because people seem to have really enjoyed them. So we'll see if we can get some out.
Great, thank you. Is there anything you want to add before we tie things up?
Not about the book, but I do want to say just how amazing of a job you are doing with all of this stuff. Like, I know this is hard work and a labor of love, and yeah, I think you've got so many people through lockdown and with your other series, and this is to have a voice of magic that actually sits and reads the books and studies the tricks is essential, and we haven't had that for years. Jamie and Swiss isn't writing reviews like he used to anymore, and Michael Close isn't. So to have you actually doing this on videos, I know it's a real hard job, and I couldn't think of anyone better to do it. So thank you for all the work you put in, because I'm sure you don't get enough thanks for it. So I'm speaking
really
on behalf of
Magic. Yay.
Thank you.
Yay, God, who would have thought Stevie Faulkner, the street performer, was getting little feedbacks like that. Thank you so much.
Oh, no worries. You can do your straitjacket act on the next episode, maybe.
I will never do it again. I will, if the money's right. I'm not going to do it virtually. Just everybody, I will top and tail this, but with a little intro and outro. But the Boy Who Cried Magic is available clearly from Vanishing Inc. It is selling out the special editions of. Didn't you broke the website on the first day? So
it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah. We always joked about other people who said like, you broke our website. No, you didn't. Like, but somehow it broke ours. So really proud of the launch. And thanks again for having me on this. And I'm really glad to have done this with you.
Thank you very much. I look forward to the next masterclasses and whatever's coming up next. Thank you so much, Andy.
Cheers, Steve.
Take care.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. So again, thanks to Andy. Obviously, there's loads going up on the Vanishing Inc site at the moment. Again, I know I said it in the thing, it's not an affiliation thing. I don't get any kind of affiliate fee or anything like that. But, I like spreading the word of good magic. So The Boy Who Cried Magic is available from Vanishing Inc. All the links will be in the description below. Obviously, check out the masterclass. I watched the Guy Hollingworth one yesterday. That was brilliant. And all their other ones, and then the Connected series, and all this stuff that's very, very current for us now, as well as the tricks that we love to buy, of course. So all the details below. Please like, subscribe, check out Card Magic course, and thank you so much again to Andi Gladwin. Have a great one.